Teen Challenge, Living the Legacy, celebrating 60 years of faith, hope, and freedom through new life in Christ.
How you doing? Brother John here. All right, welcome to my morning devotional. All right, so we're going to look at Teen Challenge and why I support it. I had some blowback. Some people are concerned about some of the fiascos that have happened. Okay, I'll be the first one to say that. Well, actually, I'm going to share about a fiasco that I had to live through in one of the Teen Challenge centers, but I'm also going to talk about Teen Challenge as a whole and how it was the catalyst that changed my life and gave me the foundation of the Bible, and to this day, I support it 1,000,000%. We're going to look at that as well through the scriptures. So I figured we'll just start this off by giving you a brief history of Teen Challenge, and then we're going to talk about my center. Then we're going to talk about how I almost died, okay, and how mismanagement of one center, you can really see the fruit of it now. It's being shut down. We're going to look at, it's a total fiasco, an absolute disaster. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about it, all right? We're going to look at it. I'm not going to hide what happened. I'm going to talk about it boldly, okay? And I'm also going to promote it and promote Teen Challenge and the fact that we're going to have some bad centers. That's just a fact. There are some total fiascos with Teen Challenge, but there's overwhelming fruit of it. We're going to look at it. So here it is here.
That the stirring of the Holy Spirit would change the course of his life in a way that was incomprehensible at that point in time. He would go after those who were so lost it would take an act of God to reach them. The teenage gangs of New York City.
It's a Tim Hortons, eh?
This trip changed his life forever. David Wilkerson's burden for the lost of the city increased and gave birth to Teen Challenge, a nationwide ministry to reach out to people with life-controlling habits.
Teen Challenge became primarily a drug prevention program, an inpatient care center, and I had to set up the home in Brooklyn. We set that up in 1960 and expanded from there simply to take care of those that we were preaching to that had no place to go. The hospitals couldn't handle them at the time. Nobody was set up. And drug addiction then spread across the country. We just followed.
The ministry's Bible-based recovery program to troubled teens, gang members, drug addicts, and alcoholics has been recognized as one of the most effective efforts of its kind. Teen Challenge has grown to include 173 residential programs and numerous evangelism outreach centers in the United States, and 241 centers in 77 other countries. The program's cure rate of 86% has been recognized and substantiated by the U.S. government's National Institute on Drug Abuse.
Okay, so a secular society, so secular studies, it's unlike mainstream. The President of the United States, even like over the world, it's pretty well recognized as, if you graduate that program, okay, you run a very high success rate. Now, I don't know. Who knows? Like, are we talking 100 million, 200 million, a quarter billion people have been influenced by the ministry of Teen Challenge? I don't know. I honestly don't, because I think people don't understand how diabolically satanic drug addiction truly is, because it affects the people that drug addict loves the most. So your parents, your grandparents, your loved one, your children, you become an absolute terror for the people that you love the most. You're lying to them, you're stealing from them, okay? But when you get off of drugs, when you clean up drugs, the blessing that you can then impart onto your children, your family, their children's children, it saves lives, saves the government. Like, instead of going to prison, you go to Teen Challenge. Instead of going to a facility for the mental health, you go get saved, get cleaned off of drugs, and you literally being given a new life to live. It truly is amazing, the amount of fruit, okay, and the lives that have been impacted by Teen Challenge. Now look at a couple of statistics. Then we're going to look at the center that I went to. So Teen Challenge, founded in 1961 by Pastor David Wilkerson, okay. Just skip down to the bottom. It says, in 2020, global Teen Challenge would have more than 1,400. Think about it. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Centers in 125 countries around the world. 125 countries. Now, I had an opportunity to minister to Teen Challenge Mexico, and I wish I could show you pictures of these young guys. They're so healthy, on fire for the Lord. Okay, inside this teen challenge, they eat some tortillas and rice. Okay, very humble. The facilities are very humble. Okay, but they love the Lord, and they're my brothers. Okay, all over the world. Depending on what center you go to, if you're a teen challenge graduate, you're my brother or my sister. Okay, it's a fraternity of people that have escaped prisons. Okay, we're talking some bad guys have turned into some very good leaders in the community through the program of Teen Challenge. All right, so I'm just going to go really quick and show you the center that I went to, and we're going to talk about how I almost lost my life at Teen Challenge. We're going to talk about the good, and we're going to talk about the bad. We're going to talk about the leadership of one center. There it is. I slept in that bunk bed. There's my chapel. I ate at that table, those chairs, literally. All right. So I want to touch a little bit about the base of the program, because I don't think they really even identify as, well, I don't know. I'm not a spokesman for Teen Challenge, okay? But I think they're not looking at it as a drug and alcohol rehab center. It's more like a Bible college / military boot camp. Okay? They teach the Bible. They don't look at a 12-step program. They look at it as a life program where they institute some major rules. We're going to look at it right now. This might shock a few people, but if you're unaware of what Teen Challenge is. So, for an example, this is one of 30 pages that you have to sign off. It's a contract. It's a 1-year contract that you can't leave, okay? You have to abide by their program rules, and you're subject to them. So, here's just one example. Girlfriends and boyfriends are engaged students. At Teen Challenge, we follow a biblical model of marriage, not common law. While you're a student in the program, there are no girlfriends or boyfriends. They're very strict on that. You can't even talk to boys or girls when you're in the program. This is really strict program. Okay, just skip down. Here's for an example when you go to church. On Sunday morning, students are to be ready to leave the church at the scheduled time. Once at church, you go in publicly, directly to the sanctuary. Front rows, as directed by the staff. Yes. You got to wear a tie if you're a guy. And as quietly as possible as the group remains in an attitude of prayer. You got to take sermon notes. Okay, they check your sermon notes. If you need to use a washroom, you raise your hand, you get permission. Then you have to have a partner when you go use the washroom. When you load the van, when you're around public, everything is disciplined. Like, it is literally like a military boot camp for knuckleheads. Okay, and when I say knuckleheads, it's people that have lived lives without any discipline, and now they're thrown into this environment. It's almost like a military boot camp. It was great. It's exactly what I needed in my 20s, and it changed my life. Okay, so I'm just going to look at, here it is here. This is, I actually cooked on that stove. That's the stove I cooked on, and I think I was cooked for like 3 months. And that's a chapel. Interesting enough, later on, 10 years after I left, one of my uncles, step-uncle, the chapel was dedicated to him. It was kind of interesting. And there on the left-hand side bottom, that chapel floor is where every single day I would get on my knees at nighttime. I was allowed to go in the chapel at night before bed. I had to get some privacy because you're on bunk beds. So I'd go in there by myself, the lights off, every single morning, or every single night, and I would call to the Lord. I'd say, Father, use me. Use my hands, my feet, and my mouth to the day I die. Use me, Father. And then after that, he launched me to Mexico. I learned Spanish, graduated Bible college, and then, of course, my testimony, this kind of segues into the center that I'm going to talk about, is that I relapsed. I had a drink in alcohol in Mexico, and one drink led to 9 years of total destruction. It ended up costing my life, my family, my integrity, my reputation. I ended up back where I first started, way back in the streets, and finally I called it to the Lord. And that's why I'm making this video today. He heard my cry, being clean and sober. I'm in my 4th year now. But I went to a teen challenge in Lake Howichan. So here it is here. Now this is, I might ruffle a few feathers on this one. But even in this, even what I'm about to say, I have to do a shout out before I say anything to Terrence. Okay, Terrence accepted me back. Terrence was a student when I graduated. He ended up staying in the program. As far as I know, he's still in the program. as one of the directors. Now, Terrence looked at me, and now I was at the weakest moment of my life. I lost everything. My family, respect, everything. I'm back doing it's called a refresher. Okay, you can go back to if you're a graduate, you can do a refresher. Terrence looked at me, wrapped his arms around me, looked me in the eye. He says, John, I love you. Okay, and then he sort of took me under his wing. Okay, and what a tremendous testimony of this brother. I consider him as close to me as a brother. Okay, and what a tremendously awesome man of God. Now I'm going to tell you about what happened, because it wasn't his fault. He did the best he could. He was just one man. And the leaders let's look at that. So Hebrews 13:11 says, obey your leaders and submit to their authority, for they are men who must give an account. They keep watch over you as men who must give an account. Okay? Obey them so that their work may be a joy, not a burden, for this would be no advantage to you. Okay, so obey your leaders and submit to their authority. Another one is James 3:1. It says, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, or instructors is another word for that. For you know that who instruct or teach will be judged with greater strictness. So in Teen Challenge, regardless if you have a bad leader or a good leader, you would submit to their authority. You'll never find a perfect center to get off drugs. You just won't. You'll never find a perfect church. They're made up of people. People make mistakes. They're human. They have emotions. Tragic mistakes happen. And even horrible leaderships happen. Okay, that's just a fact. But every leader has been established by God. The sovereignty of God. And obviously, anyone can see. I don't care what denomination you're in. You can see that God's hand is on Teen Challenge. Just look at the hundreds of millions of people that have been affected by it. Okay, so Terrence was a good part of the leadership. Now we're going to talk about the leadership that I almost died. Okay, so here it is here. If you have an understanding, I'm going to talk about his name. To protect the guilty, I'm not going to use his last name. I'm not going to put his picture up because he's family friends. Okay, he knows my friends and family, and even his wife, for an example, I knew her when I was a kid. Okay, so I have a long history with this man. His name is Pastor Andy. Now, he was the executive director. Okay, we're going to talk about Pastor Andy and his leadership and what happened to Teen Challenge Cowichan. Now, underneath him was program director, program coordinator, and then the staff. Okay, so and some centers run it a little bit different, but essentially you have the executive, then you have the program director, and then you have the program coordinator, and underneath you have the staff, depending on the facility. Okay, so under Andy's leadership, when I went to, it's called a refresher, to this center here. This is the center I went to, which is such a fiasco, what I'm about to tell you. So here it is here, Lake Cowichan. That's Jamie. He's a family friend of ours. I recognize two of the other guys, but I think that the directors, my family's very involved with Teen Challenge. Even like my grandmother was one of it's called the PAOC, Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. Okay, she was one of the first graduating classes in Canada. So she's always had she's a Pentecostal relationship with Teen Challenge, as well as like my mom went and saw him live, and my family's been supporting Teen Challenge for generations. Okay, now, until the day she died, she was supporting students. Okay, so faith-based addiction camp opens at Cowichan Lake. All right, so that's a center. Now, when I showed up at that center, here it is here. I'm getting to the part where I almost died. So here's a center. There's a screenshot. The most awesomest facility you could ever imagine. Okay, so Pastor Andy, the executive director, the first thing I did was I came in, I saw Andy, I said hi to him. We recognized him, of course. Anyways, I sat down and I saw Terrence. He said hi to me, but the program coordinator. No, let me just look at this. Yeah, the program coordinator, not the director. I sit down to do my intake. Now I'm doing a refresher, and I sit down and I'm looking at him, and I said, we were just talking, and I said, have you done the program? Like, you don't necessarily have to be a program to be a staff member there, but it helps. Okay. Anyways. He says, oh, yeah, I was in this center. I said, oh, yeah, that's great. When did you graduate? He goes, oh, no, I dropped out. I said, what? I said, you dropped out? He says, oh, yeah, it wasn't for me. I dropped out. I said, well, how long ago? And I think it was only like a few months. A few months had gone by, like 60 days. Forgive me. If you're part of Teen Challenge, you're like, you should be outraged at this point. The program coordinator is the guy that dropped out, and it was only like a few months. So Andy had hired back this dropout. Okay, now This guy actually had never submitted to his addiction. He ended up losing his job because he was doing contraband and had to resign within a few months of me being there. It was a total fiasco leadership of Pastor Andy. The guy had zero leadership skills whatsoever. We're going to talk about it. Anyways, so I said to him, I said, what do you mean you dropped out? I said, like, what are you doing here? He's not, he doesn't even have a year clean. Okay. He's like, oh, it's such a fiasco. And program coordinator is like a very prestigious job with Teen Challenge. You're in charge of all the students. Okay. He had no business at all being paid. It's a higher paid staff than the regular staff. Anyways, it kind of set off my journey under Pastor Andy's leadership of this beautiful, you have to imagine, beautiful facility. One of the best facilities I've ever seen in my life. Anyways, it went from there to, they had 2 students that had graduated. Now, one of the students that had graduated, it's a very fresh center, it was a new center, had driven, he had a driver's license, and he had pulled off in front of a moving vehicle. I guess he wasn't paying attention. He got T-boned, and he actually injured one of the students. Students had back problems. He had to go through ICBC. That's the insurance company that we have here in Canada. Anyways, instead of having this student driving privileges revoked, for whatever reason, he kept driving. Now, I'm going to tell you this straight up. I don't care where you're from. If you understand what a logging road is, okay, a logging road is where they drive trucks, okay? Now, this particular student, he had graduated, so he was like a student leadership, okay? Anyways, he decided, he was driving us to church, decided to take logging roads to the church during a snowstorm, okay? This is straight up. So I'm in the van, I'm in the back seat, and obviously there was incredible amount of demonic activity through this student, but he started driving like Gran Turismo or like a video game down these back roads where you have like literally drop-offs over 200 feet, okay? Now I'm in the back of this van. Remember, this is Teen Challenge, okay? I told you about how Teen Challenge changed my life. I'm telling you about how I almost died. Anyways, we're driving down these back alleys, and literally everyone it was a packed van of students. We're gonna die. The students, like, if you want to know how to pray, I'm praying, oh Lord, Lord, and the students are holding on for dear life, and he's got this minivan just pinned to the max, and he's trying to fishtail around the edges, like he's ludicrous. Anyways, we get to the church, and I let him have it. I'm like, what are you doing? I said, you almost killed us. And during the trip, I screamed out, Father, save us. I'm so terrified. Anyways, I get back to Pastor Andy. Now, remember, I know this guy. I didn't know him on a personal level. I knew his wife on a personal level, and he knows my family. Like, these are family friends of ours. I'm like, Pastor Andy, this guy almost killed us. Well, nothing happened. Literally, the guy was driving the same day, and literally the next week, one of the other students, okay, another guy, they had what's called a vehicle program, says, I almost died. I said, what do you mean? He says, this, they call him extended student training, or he's a student leader. He had graduated. He's like, he's doing 110 down the road, because they had a vehicle program where you can donate your vehicles. This guy had access to all the fast cars. He's taking students out joyriding. He'd already almost killed one student. He almost killed a whole van full of students. And then the very same week, the guy comes. So I went to Pastor Andy again. He would have none of it. And that's the problem with Pastor Andy, is that, I am a tough guy. I just straight am. I'm a tough guy. You can see my face. I'm punched in the head so many times. I've broken my hand on people's faces. Okay. I lived in, like, for an example, Vancouver pretrial. These are pen guys. These are literal murderers. My cellmates were like literal, like, straight up, triad gang members. I've lived with the toughest, the meanest, the most violent people you'll ever imagine. I come out of Vancouver, Maine, and Hastings as a teenager all my life, living in the most extreme, violent territory. But I'm the nicest guy you'll ever meet, and I'll defend you. He was a bully. Pastor Andy was a bully. He had like this snarky attitude where he had his leadership, where he was like almost picking on the students. Okay, like the guy was just an absolute disgrace as a leader. Okay, so the last thing, sorry about the noise.
A few moments later.
All right. All right. So the last thing I want to say about his leadership is probably, in my perspective, the hardest part of it. You know, in the van where the guy almost died, like, I've been in so many car accidents. I kind of, you know, as much as I was terrified for my life at the time, in retrospect, looking back, it probably, we probably would have survived the crash if he went over the embankment. And the other student, like, if he flipped the vehicle, like, you know, he'd already almost killed that one guy. And Pastor Andy, he claims to be a Christian. Anyways, the worst part of Executive Director Pastor Andy's leadership was the ministry outreach team. Okay, now what the ministry outreach team is that every Sunday the students would go to a new church, and typically the church leader would give a presentation of Teen Challenge, okay, as a representation of Teen Challenge, all right? And like I said, you file in, you take sermon notes. Anyways, the leader that Pastor Andy had chosen to do these ministry outreaches, like, even to this day, it honestly affects me. It affects my love for Teen Challenge, okay? My love for the program, my love of Pastor David Wilkerson, the representation that this man did Sunday after Sunday after, the absolute mockery and blasphemous teachings that this man would bring to all the different churches as a representation of Teen Challenge. That was the hardest thing about it. Now, it was in Lake Cowichan. We're out in the middle of nowhere. There was no reason why Pastor Andy couldn't be the representative himself. And typically, my first year when I went to the other Teen Challenge, which was awesome leadership, awesome people, they always went out. And it was like a family. There was prayer. You know, there was a ministry team. But when this Pastor Andy guy sent out this, and the guy that represented Teen Challenge was his qualifications was that he graduated a 12-month program. Okay, he wasn't a pastor. He wasn't a leader in the sense that had any training to do these ministry outreach. Pastor Andy sent out some guy that had graduated the program to preach whatever heretical, blasphemous teachings, literally blasphemous teachings in the name of Teen Challenge. That was the hardest part about the whole thing. Anyways, I pray for Pastor Andy. You know, I always say, like, you want to talk about me? Okay. I lost my family. I lost my respect, my job. I publicly talk about my failings in life. Okay, that's a fact. Now, I have no issue at all talking about Pastor Andy's failings as a leader at Teen Challenge. That's how much I love Teen Challenge. That's a fact. Now, I love Pastor Andy with all my heart. I honestly do. I'd lay down my life for the guy. That's a fact. But I have an obligation to speak boldly, okay, in truth, about what I experienced during Teen Challenge. Now, as bad as all that sounds, I have a picture on my YouTube right about here saying if you want to support, or I don't solicit donations, but I want to encourage you to give to Teen Challenge, okay? Because Teen Challenge is saving lives, and they're not all Pastor Andy facilities. And at the end of the day, the fruit of Pastor Andy is that beautiful, beautiful facility is shut down. It's gone. They vacated it. There's nobody there. That's a fact. They took a center that had the opportunity to grow food and impact the kingdom of God, the most incredibly awesome facility. They're all gone. God shut it down. That's a fact. You know, if God wanted to still be open and people having their lives transformed, it would be open. But they're not. It's gone. It's gone. And it's a sad thing. If I had $1 million or if I had $10 million, the first thing I would do in my life would be reopen that center. Because where I live here in Canada, it's called Victoria, Canada. We don't have one single bed on the whole entire island. I think it's like 250,000 people here. During the national opiate crisis, during people dying on addictions, we don't have a single bed available for them. If we wanted to send them to Teen Challenge, we have to send them on ferries and so forth. And it's a big trial because Vancouver, there's 4 million people in our province. You know, we need a center here in Victoria. If I had the opportunity, I would reopen that center. You know what I would do? I would restaff it with Teen Challenge graduates that will screw up. They'll make mistakes. That's a fact. But I would be hands-on. I wouldn't send out absolute blasphemous heretics to represent Teen Challenge. I would make sure that the people driving those vehicles were driving the speed limit, it's kind of shocking because when I was in Teen Challenge, I had my driver's license and we had accountability partners where we had to drive we got in trouble if we drove beyond the speed limit. We would lose our driving privileges. This guy's almost killing people. And so you can see that all the different teen challenges have different rules, okay? And none of them are perfect, but you have an extreme awesome center, okay, that saved my life, gave me an incredible environment of healing, okay? And then you have another center where I felt like I was gonna die. But I still support Teen Challenge. I hope that blesses you. If Pastor Andy ever watches this, I forgive you, okay? Look at the way look at my past. I have a wreckage in my past of poor decisions that I made in my life, okay? But God has forgiven me. I got back on my knees, I repented. And Pastor Andy, God's got a plan and purpose for your life. Obviously, you feel a calling of God in your life, okay? That's a fact. God's got great plans for your life. What a testimony would that be, is if you went down that narrow path and the Lord opened up. You had such an incredible opportunity. And it's an absolute fiasco that this place is being shut down. It is. But praise the Lord, God is a God of fixing people that have fiascos. Look at my life. I pray the Lord bless you. Keep you strong in the faith. And always remember, Brother John loves you. Bye.